Hi, Brad at Labor Compliance Group. June newsletter. I'm going to cover California DIR Prevailing Wages Q&A. This will be short and sweet and to the point. What is the methodology for determining the prevailing wage rate? The prevailing wage rate is the basic hourly rate paid on public works projects to a majority of workers engaged in a particular craft, classification, or type of work within the locality, and in the nearest labor market area if a majority of such workers are paid at a single rate. If there's no single rate paid to a majority, then the single or modal rate being paid to the greater number of workers is prevailing. In other words, DIR is going to do a survey. They're going to get labor rates from the public and private sector, subsequently come up with whatever wages. Now, being California, is pretty much weighted in terms of whatever the unions dictate. That's just the way the rates are generated. How does the prevailing wage effect meet? California's prevailing wage laws ensure that the ability to get a public works contract is not based on paying lower wage rates than a competitor. All bidders are required to use the same wage rates when bidding on public works projects. California law requires that not less than the general prevailing rate of per diem wages be paid to all workers employed on a public works project. What does that mean? That means you go into a public works project and the wage rates are predetermined. There's no guesswork. That's good. The bad is, in many cases, the GC or whoever's running the project is not going to tell you its prevailing wage rate, and they're going to pocket the difference. That's the biggest part of this whole thing, because DIR has this slew of workers that needs to babysit the crooks out there, and there's a lot of crooks. The average penalty now for a DIR public works project for failing to pay prevailing wages is about $95,000. So it's serious business. If you're gonna play this game, do it on the up and up. Otherwise, DIR is gonna come knocking at your door. What is a prevailing wage determination? When the director of the California Department of Industrial Relations determines that the general prevailing rate of per diem wages for a particular craft, classification, or type of worker is uniform throughout an area, the director issues a determination enumerated county by county, but covering the entire area. General determinations are issued twice a year on February 22nd and August 22nd. Now keep in mind, this is about 75-80% of the determinations out there. About 20% are all over the place. Some are in December, some are in October, some are in April. You need to babysit this thing. If you fail to do this and you find out after the fact that, oh, there was a wage increase and we just weren't aware of it, well, you're going to need to go back and retroactively pay your workers the difference. Or there's a lot of third-party groups out there that are talking to all of your workers, then if the worker's saying, oh, we didn't know there was a wage increase, well, they're going to file a complaint against you, and guess what? DIR is going to come knocking at your door. If you don't know what I'm talking about, DIR is very, very complex. If you think it's as simple as completing the DAS 140 and the 142 and you're just going to go about your business, sorry, much more complex. Listed here are a bunch of courses I offer. This DIR compliance, all right, it's a 6-hour course. Why is it 6 hours? Because DIR says you need to follow all of our rules and regulations. It took me 6 hours to explain all those rules and regulations. And here it is. It's a great course. I strongly recommend, if you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, it's a small investment. Really, take advantage of it. Back on track here. Where did I leave off here? What is special prevailing wage determinations? Now I'll read it and then I'll explain it. When a particular craft, classification, or type of worker is not covered by a general determination, the awarding body may request a special prevailing wage determination. Request must be made at least 45 days prior to the bid advertisement date. 1. Who is the awarding body? LA County, Sacramento County, San Diego County, City of San Francisco. Those are the awarding bodies. There's about 1,500 in California. So just be aware who the awarding body is. And 2, DIR is going to cover 99% of the crafts defined under most types of work. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go down here, take a look at this course, Navigating DIR. I explain where all this information is. It's not as simple as, well, we've been doing this for 50 years. It's amazing. How many people call me and then I explain to them, well, if you've been doing it for 50 years, you've been doing it for 50 years the wrong way. Okay. General information. What does public works mean? Under the labor code, public works in general refers to construction, alteration, demolition, installation, maintenance or repair work. In other words, it's going to cover pretty much any type of work you're doing. And I won't go into a long story, but I get calls day in and day out saying, we're doing maintenance work. Well, okay, fine. Why do you think you're excluded from paying prevailing wages? And they'll go on and on and on and on and on, and they'll end up taking up 2 hours of my time. And then I'm going to say to them, well, it's because it falls under this guideline. And they'll go and on, and then they'll just keep going on and on and on and on. And I'm going to go, well, in the big scope of things, you need to understand what DIR defines as it states here. So construction, alteration, demolition, installation, maintenance, or repair work. Unless you're doing 100% service related work, then, and that's the other big question is service. When it becomes service related, then we have to parse it. What does that mean? Well, if your service has anything to do with installation, maintenance, is it repair work? Are you altering something? Is it construction? And then after about, again, another hour of them debating this, they're going to go, oh, I guess you're right. So in other words, take it for granted. Unless it's something so obscure, when you sign a public works construction related project, it's going to fall under this particular guise. And then you're going to sign that contract. Well, again, here it is. You're doing it under a contract. And last, is any part of this paid for in whole or in part out of public funds? And then you're going to go, well, I'm going to have to ask someone. Well, just ask the awarding agent. All right. They're going to get most of their funding from the state of California. And where does the state of California get their money? You and me. All right. It can include pre-construction and post-construction activities related to a public works project. All right. Again, I get this question all the time about architectural type stuff, or if you're doing any surveying kind of related work or what have you. That will take up a little bit of time because I would need clarification. That's one of those where you need to call me. What are prevailing wages and who must receive them? All workers employed on public works projects. All this information is explicitly from DIR. They use this language. All workers employed on public works projects must be paid prevailing wages determined by the director. And that's 100% wrong. It is skilled and unskilled workers. It's not office staff. It's not project foremen unless they're actually doing the type of work. So again, DIR in their language can sometimes be misconstrued. As I said, you need to check out my courses. I clarify all this. So in other words, all skilled and unskilled workers employed on public works projects must be paid the prevailing wage determination by DIR according to the type of work and location of the project. The prevailing wage rates are usually, but not always, based on rates specified in collective bargaining agreements. What's a collective bargaining agreement? Again, down here. Check it out. Consulting service. Since we're down here, I offer a bunch of different types of consulting services. Check it out. Email me or you can call me if you have any specifics as it relates to this. I do not do the day-to-day housekeeping. In other words, if you want somebody to do your certified payrolls, I don't do that. I'll do a bunch of other type of work, but I don't do that day-to-day kind of stuff. And how do I identify the public works project that I'm working on or will be working on? Now, DIR brought online a new software program a year ago. It was a nightmare. Today, it's cleaned up. But the bottom line is you need to find the project ID number. Every project will have a project ID number unless it falls under one exclusion, and that is a small project exemption. I'll talk about that in a second. I'm referring to the PWC 100 number. This new software program will have a reference to the PWC 100 number. It's usually a 5-digit number. It's chained to all of the different ID numbers that you're going to see once you identify your project. You want this project ID number. If you can't find it, call the awarding agent. Public works projects have a unique DIR project ID number, often referred to as the PWC 100. Any registered project can be located in the DIR's searchable database under the Public Works project. Any registered project can be located in the DIR searchable database of Public Works projects. Entering just a few pieces of information in the search tool should yield you a list. Now, here's the other deal. DIR has a list of I don't know, their database goes back, I think, probably 40 years. There could be multiple project ID numbers, believe it or not. Yeah, make sure your project ID matches something current, not something from 20 years ago. Just be careful. Otherwise, that is just a quick overview of some of the questions as it relates to DIR projects. If you have any questions or concerns, email me. Brad Williams, Labor Compliance Group. Hope that helped. Thanks for watching. See you soon.